you know, I'll slide my foot to the outside of his, roll here to clear, and cut.
Maybe.
Yeah. From the low position, from the other side. Yeah. Those of you who like to throw at the back of the blade, particularly if you do it with your hip as you're rolling through here.
Never seen that.
I'm really not terribly concerned with the fact that his blade's where it's at, because as he tries to cut, I'll just cut it down.
And then back.
And then back. Yeah. Or from here, you know, I'm not particularly good at it, but I could also make the cut to the hip. Not one I recommend, because lost another fight that way too.
From the low guard.
From the low.
So are you going to throw the back of the blade into the hip? You're in the low guard?
I can't sell that.
Can't?
I can't. I can't because because of where I like to put my elbows. I'm too big.
Speaking of your
Too
elbows,
big and my chest is too broad. If I were narrower, if I was shorter, if I was willing to stand smaller.
Not us. Everything for me is low.
Because I like to because in the low guard I like to put so much pressure on my sword side elbow and get so high, it's hard for me to get to that way. If I were willing to get low and do that, I might be able to do that, but I just consider it a weak glove in the fight. You gotta step your foot with your hips.
When you come to the offside, you can handle your hands with your face.
I mean, I could talk for 3 hours on Bastard Sword, but that's the basics of what I do. I'm gonna step out, let Greg talk about what he does.
Basically, just went through the basics pretty quickly. And I'm going to make it quick so we can put some hats on and actually try what we're talking about. That sounds like fun, right?
hoo-hoo.
Defense, I learned this first at 16, taught by Solomon. I didn't know anything else. I was taught this. I said, here, go do this, and I had a great time with it. And I was about 4 or 5 years in, and I believe it was Lance that came to me and said, hey, you're going to have to learn sword and shield if you want to be a knight. So I started learning sword and shield, and I love it also now. He talked quickly about the stance. Generally, if you're fighting a right-hand fighter, you're going to learn this stance. And most people are going to learn one stance you're comfortable with. I'm going to tell you, don't make the mistake I did. You get so comfortable with it so quick, you don't learn the other way. And then you feel so silly when you need to turn it. You come up against a left-handed fighter and you want to turn it or you want to switch the game up, it becomes foreign. So if you're going to take the time, you're going to hit the pedal, you're going to learn your shots, learn both sides. Okay? Take the time to learn it. Simple defense I was taught, as Martin said, keep your elbows in tight all the time. If your elbows aren't touching your body, they're out there. Okay? And I was taught the top of the sword stuck in the ceiling. And we're back to the boxer. You're going to move as much as you have to. If you throw this block out here, you're way overcommitted, you're too far out. You need to be able to just turn your body enough to make the block. Why is the sword stuck in the ceiling? Because it's hard to tell if it's a straight down shot coming at you or the side. So if you stick it in the ceiling and you turn your body a little bit, you've got the straight down shot covered and you got all the angles covered. And you can simply drop your guard. So defense, keep your elbows in, keep your body tight, and just slight movements. You make a slight movement, you can return back to neutral and fire back a shot. Offense, I consider and start showing you stuff, but it's going to be one of these situations where you have to fight, you have to practice it, and you're going to pick something up every time you do it. Every weekend, every time I went out, I think I'd learned one more little trick to kind of add to the arsenal of tying people up, etc. I'm going to have a sword and shield to come out with for a minute. I got one thing that's always kind of missed at this class is everybody assumes great sword, well, I'm going to learn how to fight against a great sword. There's never any attention given against a sword and shield guy. If you ever, back when I was young, that's all I fought. I found quickly it's almost an absolutely useless weapon in a melee or a field battle or a war. You're either too far away or you just got ran over. I mean, it was the truth, but it still had some fun. But you'll hit tournaments where you have to fight a sword and shield guy. And I'll tell you right off the bat, this guy has the advantage at least 2 to 1, if not 3 to 1. A good shield guy should beat a good bachelor guy every time. Okay? But the same idea, if he's right-handed, I'm going to start with my defense this way. That's kind of why I feel uncomfortable left-handed fighter. I'm going to start this way. And I got to play the range. Everybody talked about range earlier. You got to stay at range. If he gets up on me, he's won. Okay, all practical purposes. So whatever I can do, stay out of range. I'm gonna throw shots. I'm gonna keep them away. As you come towards me, obviously my defensive move is gonna be backing out to his shield side, because I'm using his shield between us still. Most of the time, that's the way a bash sword fighter is gonna go. So the sword and shield guy is gonna start predicting that. So every so often, no matter who you're fighting, to keep the game open, you're gonna have to turn into the sword shot. So you gotta learn how to move back fast and right and left. If you're just moving straight back, he's gonna catch you. Okay? Last thing on this quickly is don't be afraid to throw the shot and leave it there. If he's chasing me, he's gonna push me until you can get out of the way. Okay? Push off him, leave the weapon in there until you can get away, you're free, get sideways, etc. Unless we have any particular questions from either one of us, we'll move into some one-on-one and just go through stuff slowly.
We were just told that the people that are parked on the other side of the street against this way, against the fence, they have been asked to move their vehicles. They're going to start towing cars in 30 minutes. So if you're parked on that side, you need to go move your vehicle.
Do we have a place to move them to?
Public up there, and then walk. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be moving my car.
Apologize for interrupting you.
One more.
Yeah, there is.
Cars at 10, please.
What was great said about, moving. One of my favorite things to do is to throw a shot and move and then cut back.
Ow.
Yeah. I just make him move where I want him to go. If I get him to blind himself and he sees this motion, he blinds himself, he thinks I'm going this way, duck under, cut, duck back and cut. Keep him out of his sword range, but well within yours. And if I can move here and then jump back and make the cut, that works sometimes.
For me, it was going back as straight as far as fast as I could and wait for him to blind himself and turn. So the more immediate you make your cut, the more likely he's going to run past you. Hang on. I mean,
Yeah.
Could you go over transition between the high and low?
Between the high
Position and low position, because we've gone over that some where you're deciding you want to.
Okay, we're tight. Okay, high position, yes? Now we're more or less even. I have the high on this side, he's got the high on that side. High position here. Not a good place for him at this point, because I disengaged with this arm, and now I'm more or less resting my weight on his elbow. It may look like I'm pushing down, I'm not. I'm just leaning on it. And as long as he's willing to stand here, I'm willing to let him hold me up. I'm lazy like that. That guy. One of the things you're going to get good at with a bastard sword is making really interesting shortcuts. Like from here. Yeah. Painful. Sorry about that. That's all right. Yeah. I mean, and I can make that cut because I essentially take this hand and punch it towards my elbow while I'm pushing down with the other hand. Yes? Fulcrum. I don't know who said that. Yeah. Yeah, same principle. Do it again. Yeah. And it's a powerful shot, and if you barely put anything into it. The potential for violence with this weapon is really one of the things that
This is your edge?
Yeah.
Because he hits you flat. You gotta just drive the fist down.
But transition work in the inside game is very important. As we get into this, and most likely where you're going to get to it is where somebody makes a cut, somebody blocks, and steps in. Anybody here watch MMA? Yep.
Mm-hmm. No. That's just they put gloves.
Or done MMA? Okay. One of the principles you'll figure out if you watch a lot of MMA, you hear people talk about it, is they talk about negative space. The space between combatants. Strikers like space. Strikers like space because they need that space to generate their blows. They need that space to throw. Grapplers hate that space. Grapplers hate that space because there's nobody there to grab. So grapplers want to get in here where they can grab their opponent. Strikers want to keep space open so they can hit the other guy.
How do you get that transition?
I'm getting there. There we go. So, if I'm a striker, if I feel like the best part of my bastard sword game is cutting, I want to do the maximum amount of cutting I possibly can. That means that as my opponent comes in and presses on me, I want to roll. I want to keep him outside of me. Even in this position, he's got his arm and his hand on my blade. I'm still have some space here that I can use to work with. Actually, what I'm probably going to do is move in that direction, reverse, and cut back to his shoulder as he pulls down on me. Yeah, and then we're cutting again. If I'm a grappler with my opponent, I want to strike for his suba. Suba is this. I want to strike for his suba because that's the fulcrum around, or the pivot point around which most of the blade is going to move. If I can control the center of his weapon, which is really down here, considering where his hands are at, I'll know where it's at and I can move through the negative space. Now, this is actually not the best position for a grappler inside with this belly to belly, because I can't exert any mechanical advantage here. My weight is over my heels. I actually want my weight in a tripod, like this. 2 points, my feet, and my opponent is a third point, holding me up. Now I can exert a lot of pressure on my opponent. Something I can't do if my weight, my shoulders, are over my heels. And God help you if your shoulders get behind your heels, because then you're just going to fall over. With a little bump, didn't even take much. See what I mean?
Everything so far is cut through the block.
Sorry?
Everything so far is cutting through the block.
Well, I'm assuming if it's free, you don't need any help from me to hit it. Okay. Not to be flippant or anything, but if it's open, just hit it. It ain't rocket science. But when you do get into this position, and we're more or less neutral now, you'll notice that our forearms are across in the front, but nobody has high position here. Yes? Yes. So now we're pressing, and truthfully, because I'm taller than my opponent, I actually have somewhat of an advantage. And it's just a fact. Those of you who are vertically challenged, let's call it.
Call it short.
Get good at the low game. Get good at the low game. And for Jerry, that means he's going to have to, right now he's got his arms up and gone for the high position. Because I'm taller, I can exert more force than he can. So from the low position, there, and that's actually quite a good low position right there, look at how much force that he can exert pushing out on me. Right. Or hook my other, get low on the inside. Now push up with that one and cut the hip as you step back with this. Just straight back. Push up with this. Okay. Pivot on the other leg. Cut from my hip. Yes?
It'd be harder.
One of the things we haven't talked about much, and how you want to deliver that blow.
Hard to actually throw that.
It's hard not to throw that hard. Yeah. One of the other things you're going to want to get good at if you're vertically challenged, that goes hand in hand with the inside game or with the low game, is not only making those cuts like he just did, but making what we call upcuts. Most of the cuts we've talked about so far have been vertically down. I've been cutting down through my opponent. The upcuts are the cuts where I'm going to cut up through my opponent. Those are important because those are the ones that keep you from getting killed. Like in this low position, I can cut him in the hip, but I can't do it without dying. I can, however, upcut here. Now notice where my hands are at. In good defensive position, particularly if I drop under it. Here. Sorry about the elbow.
I heard that.
I felt it.
That makes it like an extreme movement to drop like that. It's not. Regularly, from cuts like that, I'll drop into low positions.
This is what I was talking about when I said other than cuts through the block.
Other than cuts through the block. Any other questions? Feel free. Yeah.
So what is the tall, skinny person way to do it these days?
You die.
I've seen the large attack.
Well, work with what you got.
don't know, really, but I'm sure.
Tall, skinny guys in NCA. What's up with that? Work with what you have. You're a tall guy.
Get old and fat.
For a little while.
The tall guy with long arms, I suggest you learn how to use yanks. This one plays with it for a minute, make it easier. Cutting. This particularly works pretty well if you got a longer stick or if you got long arms. When I make the cuts, flip it over, you got the curve the wrong way.
That's one.
When I make the cuts, of course he's going to turn to block.
And so I kind of do. I back. I fight a little man's fight, but I can always go to fighting the big man's fight. And I say that to preface this. There's somebody here that often fights like I think a big guy should fight, and that's Takamatsu. What are your advantages being taller? You got reach and you got longer legs. Right, so you can maintain that range gain and make them have to come through a point where you can kill them and they can't kill you. So you want to do that. So Takamatsu fights like that all the time. He maintains that range as good as anybody.
See, in my mind, I'm 6'4".
There you go.
Me too. And 180 pounds. You're 6'4". 180 pounds, 6'4".
By the way, I've determined Takamatsu's persona. I finally figured it out.
It's Southern Japanese.
Yeah, it's a Magnolian.
To return.